What's going on, guys? Welcome to this episode of Home Built Workshop. Today we're going to learn something totally new. That's always fun and exciting in and of itself. Today we're going to enter the exciting world of 3D printing as we unbox and set up this Creality Ender 3 version 2. We're even going to see if we can get some sort of a very first print. Stick around, check it out. Welcome back to the shop, guys. I hope you're all doing great. We got something a little bit different in store for you today. One thing that I always try to encourage people to do is to not be afraid to try something new. And something new is definitely what we're gonna try today. I have ordered up a 3D printer that we're gonna try to use to make some different random things. I have absolutely zero experience in 3D printing. I've spent the last few weeks learning some basics about doing some 3D modeling so that I can at least come up with some things to try out on this machine. But what we're gonna do today is get this thing opened up and set up. What we have here is the Creality Ender 3 version 2. There's a couple of different versions, and this project actually got delayed a little bit because I mistakenly ordered one of the older versions when this is the one I wanted. So had to go do a little bit of run around to try to get the right one, but finally we got the right one. Let's pop this thing open and see if we can get it put together. Since I have zero experience with this machine, I really don't know how in-depth this whole project is gonna be. I know that I'm gonna have to put some things together, and we're gonna try to walk through that process in this video. There are several assembly videos for this machine out there, and I almost sat down and watched a few of those, but I kind of wanted to go into this totally unbiased, so this is about as far as I've gotten in the videos before I decided to not watch it, and we're gonna learn this together. So right here is exactly how it comes in the box. It's like we've got some user manuals. Right here's the glass bed. This is one of the things that's different from this version, I believe, than the other versions. The Pro may have this, I'm not 100% sure, but I know this has a glass bed. I guess let's just start pulling some parts out of there. Some sort of a cover piece. Oh, that's gonna probably be the spool holder. A couple of the stepper motors, I believe there's a limit switch there. Ooh, a couple of screws that are just kind of loose there. I'm not sure what that is yet. There's our display. I think this loose screw goes right here because I can see another loose nut down in there that matches these. So I think that's where that goes. And these are loose, so probably because we have to assemble them. It really feels like it's packed pretty well. This is pretty dense foam. Even though there's not a ton of space here, I don't really see where this can go anywhere. So I feel like that these are packed pretty good. A couple of rails. Looks like this all comes out together somehow. I don't know what, at the moment yet, what I can pull on and what I shouldn't pull on, but there we go. It's like we have some wire ties and a few tools, stuff in here. Power cable, this thing, another little stepper motor. This looks like some parts, filament, knobs, screws and bolts and things, and we'll get to that. Good thing that's in a Ziploc bag. Another piece of channel. This one has one of the lead screws in here. I think that's everything. All right, now I believe it is time, yes, for me to consult the manual. No, I'm not gonna toss it out the window. I don't know enough about this thing to even try to wing it, so we're gonna look through this really quick before we get started. Connect that thing to the other thing. Oh, there's that screw thingy that we found. That goes, okay, all right, that goes there. That thingy. And the other thingy go. After looking through this for a few minutes, it looks like there's a fair amount of steps here, but none of it looks super hard. It's got pictures and whatnot in there. I don't think it's gonna be too bad, so what do you say we get started? Step 1, installation of the Z-axis limit switches and the Z-axis profiles. This part is basically where we're going to install the limit switch for the Z-axis as well as the two uprights. First, we are going to need this thing. To get started, I'm just going to cut all of the plastic wrap off of the aluminum extrusions. I'm not sure yet which ones we're going to need, so I'm just opening them all. Now we got to find this little Z-axis limit switch right here in this bag of bits. And it also looks like we're going to need this bag of M5 Allen heads. Now one thing I'm already noticing is there are two different sets of bolt holes. So one of these clearly goes on one side of the machine, one goes on the other. You have to look really close at the picture to be able to tell. It does show this one has a couple holes drilled here, this one has a couple holes drilled right here. We're going to need the piece of extrusion that has the two holes drilled at the bottom. The limit switch is just going to slide in the channel and we'll snug it down with an Allen wrench. Now we're going to set this thing up on its side. We've got to put a couple of those bolts through, those M5 bolts, right up through the bottom. Hey look, it's got an arm. And this is the piece that has the two holes that are drilled out a lot farther apart than the other side. All of the hardware is included, as well as a small set of tools that you're going to need. I ended up using my own Allen wrenches anyway, but it's all there in the box in case you don't have any. So with this flipped around, this is the front of the machine. This is the side that gets the limit switch, goes right here. This is the side that has those two holes that are drilled right here. So the piece with the two holes is the left side of the machine. The piece with these wider spaced ones are the right side of the machine. So toolbox drawers right here. So just so you guys know kind of where we're oriented. Hopefully that's helpful to know. Step 1, complete. Step 2, install Z-axis motor kit and T-type screw. The Z-axis motor, the lead screw that runs the Z-axis. We're going to need this lead screw, this motor, and some other bolt. M418. There it is. Some of the pictures of the hardware is not the greatest, but thankfully they do put the size in there so you can kind of just look at the size, and all these little packs do have the sizes marked on there. So that's kind of helpful, although the picture here doesn't really look like a bolt. It doesn't have any threads or anything, so you don't really know if you're looking for a piece that's smooth, although it says you're looking for a bolt, but the sizes are on there, so that is kind of cool. The coupler is already installed on the stepper motor. All we need to do is drop the lead screw in the other end of the coupler and snug it down. And then we can just attach the stepper motor to those two holes that are drilled side by side in the aluminum extrusion. And that is step 2. Step 3, and this one took me a minute to figure out. Install Pneumatic Joint, the Xaxis kit, and the synchronous belt. So the Pneumatic Joint is the quick release fitting that the Bowden tube connects to. There's no pneumatics at all on this machine, so that one kind of threw me for a loop. But once I realized what it is, I do know that that type of fitting is used for pneumatics a lot of times. So we're going to install that fitting. We're also going to install the piece that supports the X-axis, as well as the rubber belt that's going to move our print head basically back and forth. We're going to need this piece, this little belt that is in the whole bag of parts, the little wrench, one piece of this smaller extrusion. There's a little package of connectors here. We're going to need those, and some M4 screws. There is two pieces of that extrusion. You're going to need the one that has these two recessed holes right here. This recess here is going to give space for this bolt. So it's going to go on like this. Then we need to put in a couple of bolts that way. It's gonna be fun. Honestly, this step is a little tricky. It's probably the trickiest one so far. It's not horrible, but they don't give you a whole lot of room. Yeah, they do. Wow, no way. I was wondering how I was gonna get in there with the holes. But there are through holes right here on the front. You can just put the Allen head right down through and tighten it up. Never mind. This step 3 just got a little easier. With that rail in place, now we have to put one of these little pneumatic connectors. That's going to go right here. Tighten it down with this handy included wrench. I don't know how tight yet, so I'm just snugging it gently. And we are left with this little belt. Where does he go? So inside this piece here with the barcode on there, there is a little geared pulley. We got to loop the belt around that. And just a heads up, this is not the last time you're going to see me messing with this belt. I didn't fully understand the instructions, so I kind of missed a couple little details, as you're going to find out a little bit later. I had to use an Allen wrench kind of as a hook because this thing was curled up in the bag. It kind of wants to stick with that curl, and it didn't want to feed down the front. So I'm going to really carefully kind of try to get these twists out of here. And that's a Gates belt, which kind of makes me feel kind of good. That's a name I'm definitely familiar with. So hopefully that belt's pretty good quality. And with that, we're on to step 4. Step 4, install Nozzle Kit Xaxis passive block. This step is basically where we are going to install the print head to the crossbar that runs the X-axis. Note to self, don't forget to connect the rubber belt at this step, or you'll be taking it back apart. Stay tuned and you'll know why. Step 4 is a really simple one. We're going to take this little 3-wheeled bracket, and again, this has a recess here which this other Allen head screw will fit into. Then there are 2 bolt holes right here that line up for a couple more of our M4 Allen head bolts. When you're at this step in the process, only put the first screw in. Don't put in the screw that I'm putting in right now. You're going to have to take it back out later. You should only install the first screw at this point. And now I believe we can slide our extruder and things in place. So you want to do this before you install the bracket. So slide on the extruder, then install the bracket with only 1 screw. There we go. Now we can tighten that back down. Order of operations is important right there. Consult our manual for step 5. Yeah, really, this is not an example of my know-how with 3D printers. I'm reading the instructions, trying to just help you walk through the assembly, because I imagine most of us, especially if we're just getting started, this is how we're going to put it together. We're going to be kind of fumbling through the instructions, trying to figure things out as we go. And by kind of recording this process and sharing it with you guys, I'm hoping that maybe it'll help answer a few questions or something like that, or at least see the areas that I got stumbled up on, and hopefully that doesn't happen to you, or I don't know if that makes any sense, but hopefully this mess is helpful. Step 5, install Xaxis Tensioner. This is where we're going to install the tensioner that will tighten the belt for the X-axis. Pretty self-explanatory, but you do need to take that unit apart. Aha, there it is. Ooh, they're sneaky, sneaky. One of the screws that is listed on there is in the package with the tensioner, which we're going to install now. And right here I'm noticing the first error with that rubber belt. Alright, we're going to go back to our little belt. I should have fed the belt so it goes all the way down and wraps around. It actually shows that in the instructions. I didn't do that. So again, order of operations. Okay, so we're supposed to have the belt so both of these little brass ferrules on the end are here at the bottom. Now we can put the extruder in place. Pull out our little tensioner piece. And now we're going to loop the belt through there. In order to feed this through, you have to remove this little Allen head here. That's 2 bearings here, so be careful you don't lose anything. When you take the tensioner apart, pay attention to the direction that everything is oriented. It'll only go back together one way. So if it doesn't seem like it wants to go back together when you put it on, try flipping the piece around. It should go right in. And I guess it's a good thing that I had to loosen that up because it goes like that. Who knew? So when you install this little bracket, only install it with the front screw. There's gonna be an empty hole back here that's gonna get filled when we put the tensioner in place. Here's what we have. Got our tensioner. Our 2 brass ends for the belt is down here. And now we are ready to move on to step 6. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Hang on there, Turbo. I want to stop this right here just to let you guys know those brass ferrules that this guy putting this thing together was just talking about, they're supposed to be connected at this step. It actually says that in the book. It wasn't completely clear, but this guy missed it. Instead of being in that little channel like they are sitting right here in the picture, they're supposed to be in those little slots that are just to the side on the print head. You can see it here in this still. They're supposed to be connected. This dude's gonna figure this out a little bit later, so let's just play along and see how this all pans out. Step 6, install the Zaxis moving kit and adjust the tightness of the X-axis and Y-axis tensioners. This step is kind of where things start to come together. The sub-assembly that we just put together for the X-axis will get attached here to the machine. And from what I can tell, this is the step where it actually starts to look like something. When you're lining this up, this threaded rod has to go down in this other threaded piece here. So you got to make sure that lines up. There we go. Step 7, install the gantry profile and the display kit. We're just going to connect that piece at the top as well as bolt the display on. Now we can take the other piece that has the 2 holes in either end. Now it all makes sense. Goes right on the top. And again, they have recesses here for the bolt heads. Make sure that recess is facing up. And the display. So this dude just goes on the side somewhere in this neighborhood. We'll be able to adjust all of this later. If we want this thing in a little bit different location, we'll figure that out. I've even seen some modifications where people make new brackets. We might even do that too. We'll just plug this guy into the back, making sure we have it the right way. Aha, now it actually looks like something. Step 8, install material rack, gantry cover, and indication knob. For step 8, we're going to install this spool holder using a couple of these little screws and these little T-slot nuts. We're going to install these end caps for the top of that rail, as well as this little knobby guy. So for the spool holder, I'm just going to thread those little T-slot nuts on the bottom of the screws, and then we should be able to just drop it down into place. About like that. And then this spool holder has this little piece on the end that twists and pulls off. So you can place that on there, lock it in somehow. Oh, you gotta push a little harder. There we go. These little rail caps just pop right in there. When you are ready to install this knob, you want to pay particular attention. It looks like there is a flat spot inside the knob as well as on the shaft, so make sure you get that flat spot lined up. Don't try to force it into place. It could damage something. And that knob doesn't really snap on there, it just kind of sits there. Cool. Step 9, wire connection. This is really the last step of assembly where we are going to connect all of our stepper motors to the wiring harness. All the plugs are there, we just gotta make the connections. Now I need to make these final electrical connections, but I realized I made a teeny mistake. This whole loom of wires is supposed to pass through here to the back. Unfortunately, I got this pretty much all together, so hold please while I pull this back off and switch those wires to the back. Oh boy. I just wanted to kind of warn you guys because, well, if I did it right here, someone else is going to probably have that happen to them too. So this does go to the back side. Mine kind of was tangled down in here, so it looked like it was in the right spot, but it's not. It has to go through here, so hang on. I want to show another thing that I forgot. The ends of this belt has to be attached in these little slots. I didn't realize I forgot that until I pulled this back off to untangle the wires, but make sure that those get in those slots. It's not hard to do, but you got to do it at the right time, otherwise you got to take it back apart. Now we're going to pretend that that little piece never happened. We're back on track. Wires are untangled. Now we just need to make a few electrical connections. In this bundle of wires, there are 3 connections. The small one is going to go to the limit switch. And then if you look at the other 2, they look almost identical. But one has an E marked on it for extruder. That's going to plug into here. The other one has an X marked on it, which will plug into the X-axis motor. These plugs go in a certain way, so make sure you line up the tabs so you don't end up damaging any of the pins or anything. The limit switch here is underneath this cover with the barcode. It was really tricky to get my fingers in there. I ended up using a pair of needle nose pliers to make the connection. That one's a little tricky to get to. Down here on the Z-axis, we have the same thing. There's this one with the 3 pins, the smaller connector. That one's going to go to the limit switch, and then there is a larger one that will plug into the back of the stepper motor. We're going to have to adjust that here at some point. So now we're going to place this Teflon tube. It's going to go into this little pneumatic fitting. And this wire clips into this thing. And for that pneumatic fitting, there are these little blue locking rings. That's going to clip down in there, just like that. So that wraps up the assembly. At this point, we're now ready to power this thing up, I believe, and maybe do a little bit of calibration and hope for a test print. So now we can connect our power cable. One thing important is that the power is switchable between 115 and 230. There's a little port right here where you need to make sure you select the correct power. In my case, I got it set to 115. We're now gonna plug this thing in and power it up. It's alive! Once the machine boots to the main menu, we're going to go into the Prepare menu and scroll down to the Auto Home setting. This is going to automatically send the machine to its home position. It's important to be at this position to level the bed. So right away, before I continue with the bed leveling, I'm noticing that the nozzle stops a long ways away from the bed here, and I believe that is because I didn't set this limit switch down as far as I needed to, and that's honestly because I didn't really know how far it needed to go. So I'm going to lower that down first so that I can get this nozzle a little closer to the bed. Then we'll re-home the machine and see if it stops a little bit closer. I don't want it to crash into the bed, but I want it to be a little closer because we're going to use these wheels here to raise and lower each corner of the bed. I'm going to loosen the mounting screws for the limit switch and slide it as far down as it'll go. As long as you don't loosen these screws too far, this thing can still slide up and down. You can feel somewhat of a hard stop at the bottom. I've got it all the way down to that, snugged it down real good. Now I'm just going to re-home the machine and we'll see if that nozzle is closer. Cool, that is definitely closer. Now I've gone into the menu and disabled the stepper motor, still following the directions, which of course I believe is going to disable the motors so that nothing will move on us, where we can now level the bed. There are other machines out there that have automatic bed leveling, but honestly, this step is not really hard at all. It just takes a few minutes and you'll probably find that you have to do it several times. We're going to put a piece of paper between the bed and the nozzle and then slowly raise the bed until we can feel just the slightest amount of drag on the piece of paper. Then we'll move to the next corner and do that exact same process until the tension between the nozzle and the paper is exactly the same at all four corners of the bed. And since this has a nice flat glass bed, that's going to make it nice and even across the whole entire surface of the bed. I'm going to emphasize the importance of taking your time at this step. It's really important that you get this set right. You don't want the nozzle too close or too far away from the bed. If it's too close, you could risk having the nozzle smash into the bed and damage either the bed or the nozzle, or who knows. Based on my personal experience with this step, I ended up doing this about 4 times before I moved on and tried any sort of a test print. That process of leveling the bed, it really is not difficult at all, but I did have to do it several times, rehoming the machine in between each time. So every time I made it the rounds, I set the machine to rehome itself. Then I noticed that as you tip the bed, it changes some of your dimensions. So the more that you do it, the closer it gets, until that when I go to the home position, it still had the same adjustment as before I moved it. That makes sense? You gotta do it several times, basically. Now we're gonna go back into the menu, set this thing to preheat, and then while it's preheating, we'll be able to load some of the test filament. At the moment, I don't have any big spools. I ordered some a couple weeks ago. Some reason it hasn't been delivered yet. I don't know what's going on there, but thankfully they've given us a little bit in the package here, and hopefully it's enough to get something printed here. Apparently all you do, there's a little hole in the back here. Apparently all you do is squeeze this little handle to release it, and then you just run your filament through here. There's a hole down in here that leads to this tube. We're going to carefully feed the filament down through the tube until it makes contact with the nozzle. You'll feel it stop once you get in there. And at this point, I believe we are ready to load some kind of a file and do a test print. Now, Creality did provide a little USB thing with a micro SD card in there that appears to have a couple files on it. I don't know if that's enough filament to test those files or not, but I've got the SD card loaded in the SD slot. I'm not going to cover preparing files to print on this thing because honestly, I'm not the expert in that. I need to learn that myself, but there are plenty of tutorials out there that'll help you out with some of that stuff. There are some things included with this, some information about the slicer tool that Creality has. I'm going to look into all of those options and figure out what's going to work the best for me. Let's hit print on this thing and see what happens. Look, it's doing something. Ah, we lost our little doggy. Look at our little dog. Our first successful 3D print. Interesting. We got a little dog. So here it is, guys. The very first print ever created here at Home Built Workshop. I think overall it came out really good. Our little dog, pig looking thing. I think it's a dog. That's what the file said anyway. This was just one of the files included from Creality. Now I have to go about learning how to do some modeling of my own so I can have my own designs to print on here. I've been spending a lot of time trying to learn Fusion. There's other modelers out there, and this is not sponsored at all by Fusion, but it's definitely the one that I've been learning, and so far I think it's going to do everything that I need it to do. There's also tons of places you can download files if you want to just start making things. I'll probably do the same thing, download a few things and try them as well, but overall, this is fun, this is exciting, and I'm excited to really get into this and learn what all is possible. I can already see I'm probably going to end up with a bigger machine at some point. This is going to be cool. Thanks a lot for watching, guys. I hope this was helpful if you're trying to set up the same machine. If you have any questions, comments, suggestions, leave them down below if you would, and I will try to answer them as best as I can. Thanks a lot for watching, guys. We'll see you next time. Aha, I see what you got going on there. I see what they're doing. I get this. All right. Is it the bigger one? Ah, there goes that. I can't reach in there. Or is it a pig? Dog? Maybe it's a dog pig. I don't know what this is. Something with the setups or something, I'm guessing. That's pretty cool. Due to the differences between different machine models, the physical objects and the final images can differ. The final explanation rights shall be reserved by Shenzhen Creality 3D Technology Corporation Ltd.